most importantly, the way out is in. It's it's it sounds simple, but every answer that you need is inside of you. Delve deep inside, because if you were meant to get that happiness from the cars, from the family, from children, you would have got it by now. The fact that you're stuck, you feel there is something beyond this, and you've seen all of it outside. Nothing brings you joy. It's you need to come back to yourself. It's all
Yeah.
inside. There's a whole beautiful world inside you. We all have that innate mechanism, that system, those gifts, and the only way to activate them is self work.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode. If you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing. If you're listening to me on Apple, make sure you leave a review. And if you're on Spotify, I always leave a question for you to answer about the episode. So make sure you engage on that. So today, my guest is Shillpi. She's a modern day spiritual alchemist on a quest to transmute life experiences into profound wisdom and enlightenment. She's got 22 years of experience as a psychic and a clairvoyant guide. She leads seekers on a transformative journey of self-discovery and spiritual growth, exploring the alchemy of the soul, unlocking the secrets of inner transformation and empowerment. She inspires others to awaken their true potential and embrace the magic of spiritual alchemy in their lives. She holds space for you as well as leading you into discovering your light within. Everybody, please welcome Shillpi. I'm so excited. I'm getting goosebumps at just the beginning of this, and she hasn't even spoken. So I want to tell you guys, I found her on Facebook, and there was something that just resonated with her background. I wanted to have more spiritual people here on my podcast because I want people to open up just their mind to different ways of life. So everybody, please welcome Shillpi.
Hi, Paola. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I know it was a random connection, but then the work I do is all about following in the, steps of the universe, signs. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh, so tell us about your fearless female journey. Where did this all begin for you?
Oh, long one there. We all have, I'm sure all of us have these journeys we've taken, and there's so much to go as well. But, you know, it started, I would say it started right in childhood when I was 4.5, 5 years old. And so it all goes back to your childhood. And my sister was born, and she has a medical disorder. She's got thalassemia major. So I remember the first memories are of parents trying to figure out what was happening. And then, you know how it is, the relatives coming in, and then, you got to pray, that's how she's going to live longer. If you pray, you're going to be granted, good health for her. So, and I was 4.5, 5 years old at that time. So there were a lot of times I was left home alone because they were still trying to take her, figuring out the new symptoms. And I remember, so my first actually memory of my, understanding of there's something apart from where we are, parents, what we see, is I remember I was sleeping at night and I was very, very scared. And then I see this goddess, of course, because we are Indians, right? So I see this vision, and it was very, very soothing, and I slept. The next day morning, I mean, you don't realize it then. It's only later on that you remember that, oh, that was one, when you see the pictures of the goddess later on. And so that was, I think, my first running into something which is there, but we can't see it. So it's the unknown, and then, life went on. But then I personally feel that running into life, seeing people in the hospitals being sick, the fragility of life, that touch, really just seeing how people are suffering came in too early in life.
Mm-hmm.
So that was childhood. And then I remember, trying to figure out, well, I was a very different kid in school, very shy. And I remember I came across a copy of one of the books, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Okay.
And I remember my grade 10 teacher saying, "Do you understand it? It's really profound." And I said, "I don't get it, but it sounds like something that I would want to know. It's beyond what we can see," right? It was all about relationships, how you can raise children. Your children are not through you, they are the yearning of life through you, but they're not yours. I mean, of course, in a very profound language. So I started reading that. And then, that's where I think the teenager from reading those Nancy Drews came down to reading more, yeah, profound stuff. And then I remember I was in college doing my literature, and suddenly my mom says, "Oh, no, you have to do something which is more professional." So I landed up being, we see an ad in the newspaper for one of the medical colleges. So I'm actually a physical therapist.
Oh.
By profession, so 5 years of degree back home. And I think that was one of the most transformational events of my life, because we were looking through it, and then my mom says, "You know what, but the admissions are over, they've done the exams and everything." And then somehow the connection happened. And I remember I went to one of the temples I used to walk to pray, but instead of going to the temple, I went to these gurudwaras, which is more for the Sikhs. And because it's very non-conspicuous and people don't see you, and I was so upset with how things were going. So I remember I went and I cried, and I said, "This is chaos. I mean,
Mm.
just do that. The world is going crazy. And I certainly know this is not my path." So I was crying. And then you again remember things later on. You don't realize it then. So I saw two dicky birds. It's such another vision, which is so powerfully, embedded in my memory. Two dicky birds coming in from nowhere, again, a sign. And I stopped crying, and I felt that something had shifted. I came back home, and mom said, "You know what? I know we know the people." And somehow I went there, got the admission done, and they had a prayer room there, and I was sitting, and then I literally heard. So earlier I was just seeing, and now the hearing began, and it said, I remember the voice was so powerful. It said, "You'd asked for it, and it's been granted." And I
Mm.
was like, so all the way on that place was in the mountainous region. So I remember I was invoking all the leaves. I don't know where that wisdom came from. I'm sure it's from previous lifetimes. It's not coming from now. And I was invoking, and I said, "You know what? This feels like leading to my path." I didn't know what I'm going to do there, but I just knew that this is meant to be. I
Mhm.
needed to be away to be able to figure out the gifts. I needed to be able to figure out what's happening in my life. I reached there, and when I heard that, I realized that the owner of the college and that place was also a Sikh gentleman.
Mm.
Yeah, and it was like, wow. And I remember coming down, and it was a huge open area. I went down on my knees, and I said, "Okay, but now what? Wait, I'm an emotional mess. There's so much to be sorted. And here I am in a medical college, right?" And then, I think things started moving, and I could hear my name being called out. And I think that's where the gift of clairvoyance and things like seeing things, yes, a little bit,
Uh-huh.
it just kind of, started flowing in. But then I also had a realization there that there was, for you to be a channel, you have to be an empty vessel.
Mm.
At no point are we empty vessels, because we're carrying so much,
Yeah.
so much childhood. And I remember I was 21, and then I had a couple of friends there. We had a lot of profound experiences, a lot of intuitive guidances, which were mainly focused on me working on my patterns, which of
Mm.
course you don't realize. Then you're young, and you're like, "Oh, maybe it happens with everybody. I don't know." And so I was working on myself. And then I remember I was at a friend's place one night. We were coming back home, and I see this copy of a book by Dr. Brian Weiss, and that was talking about the messages from the other side, the soul. And I was like, oh no. So this is not how it happens to the whole world. This is
Oh,
different. And what's happening with me is also true. It's not a figment of my mind. It's not fiction. I think the reality just set in. And I was 23 at that time, just leading into my internship. And
yeah.
as luck would have it, they posted me in the ICU.
Oh my
And I
gosh. Well, before we go
yeah,
into some ICU stories, I have a couple questions. So when you heard the first voice that said you asked for it and it has been granted, did you think like, did I really hear that? Were you like, did you question that voice? Were you scared or did you really like think it was, from like a higher source or were you just confused?
definitely from the higher source, because even as a child, there was so much going on, seeing parents running and sorting her, taking her to the hospitals. I remember, you know, I always had that conversations with the so-called God. I mean, you'd always
Mhm.
heard there's somebody out there. So I always had those conversations. So for me, it's funny, yeah, you asked that, but it was just natural because these were only until that time, it was all one-sided. I
Yeah.
want this, in terms of, can you guide me? I'm stuck. I don't see the sense here. The world is going crazy. I don't know what my purpose is. And it certainly doesn't feel comfortable here, things like that. So
Yeah.
I think it was, now if you look back, wow, it was a aha moment. But that time it was just, you know something that was leading me to the other. It was just
Yeah. It wasn't scary
accepted.
for you because being
Absolutely.
having a connection to something outside of you was normal.
i I personally, I now that you ask, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, but because I am a psychic and I am a medium, I also know that depending on the vibration of the energy that is speaking to you or picking
Mhm.
up on, you are not meant to be scared. You're meant to
Yeah.
feel very comfortable and gentle and nice. And I think it was a higher source for definitely, because to be where I am today, that's why a lot of people say, do you think we can learn to be mediums? I said, yes, you can, but
Mm.
I as a person do not have the ability to let you experience what is the difference of communicating or connecting with a higher source or a lower vibration. It's only
Mhm.
when it's like you wouldn't know how a 220-volt or a 440-volt feels unless you felt it. There's certain
Yeah.
things you really put in words. So I think that was my training period.
Mm.
And then, life happened. I got married. And I remember that at one point I started seeing, and those visions were not comfortable feelings.
Mm.
And that's, I remember that day because we'd gone to a place, it was very spooky, and I told my husband, let's not go. And he's like, what's wrong? I said, I think the wind has shifted. I didn't know at that time. There's
Uh-huh.
something different. No, 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 no. And so we went there. There was a horse cart ride, and the horse went crazy. It wouldn't budge. And then I was like, oh no, you know what? There is something here. And I remember I came back home, and that's when I could, put two and two together from what had gone on in those 5 years in the college. And I said, that means my vibration is really low.
Mm.
I am connecting with something that's making me highly uncomfortable. It's making me sick and it doesn't feel good.
Mm.
So I knew that I had sorted the childhood there, and then those 4 years and what had come with the childbirth and the new family needed to be sorted as well,
Yeah.
to be able to raise the vibration and connect again. I mean, I didn't know I wanted to connect again, but I said I want these uncomfortable feelings to stop, because I certainly don't want to be seeing uncomfortable scary things. So
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to like when you started working at the ICU of all
yeah, I was
places.
coming back to that. And so there was this gentleman who had a tracheostomy, and he was just there. No, I actually got kicked out later on because I wasn't billing him. So I felt, he was there and I held his hand and I somehow felt that the way he looked at me, I could, I would just hold his hand and sit. And I felt I could understand what he wanted. Like he was talking, just the eyes. It was just
like telepathically.
absolutely. And the answers were also, like it was a communication that never happened in words. I would
Mm-hmm.
just sit down for those 15 minutes I had, hold his hand, won't bill him for the physiotherapy because he was there for 3 months. 3 months he was in the ICU and people said nobody comes and visits him. And I sat with him for a week, I remember. And then they told me that he'd passed over. And
Mm.
they said, he's been here for 3 months, nobody comes and sees him. So one of those experiences, then another experience there with an elderly lady, I realized that there's so much more to us than just words. And words honestly do a lot more damage than
Yeah.
really builds you up. It's all about if most of the times when you sit down and we say, what hurt you the most? It's the words.
Mm-hmm.
And when you say, what is your happiest moment? It's like, oh, I felt happy. I felt loved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very, I think, again, training, lot of training. And then you, again, like you said, the dark night of the soul, there are plenty in your lifetime when you're walking the spiritual path. So childhood, I would say that moment of going to the college was one. Then I would say again, marriage and having the first child was another one, because you are portal yourself bringing in another soul. And I remember my daughter, I always tell my children, I'm on this path because of you, so I don't know who's the parent here. I mean, I may
Yeah.
be the legally the parent, but um you've brought this gift, into my life. It was there, but it kind of surfaced more. And so I remember I used to be so angry, and she would give me that look, what are you doing? What
Mm.
are you doing? And so I remember I told her, hold this placard and say, Mommy, you're scaring me. And I remember she had to use it only once.
Mm.
After that, I was speaking to a friend of mine. And, I think on this path also, I like we say signs. There are people, when you are ready and you surrender, you will have people coming in, guiding you. And again, then if you recognize that, it's like, I always tell everybody, it's like, that story we hear, the Hansel and the Gretel, and he kept throwing those breadcrumbs to be able to find that path.
Yeah.
I say, I always tell people these are, these signs are those breadcrumbs to tell you you're on the right path.
Mm.
So look
Yeah.
for them, acknowledge them. And so I remember uh, I spoke to a friend and she had two differently abled kids and super mom. And I was telling her, what, this is what's happening. And she said, Shilpi, have you read a book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne? And I was like,
Mm.
no. She's like, whatever you're experiencing, somebody has documented it. I was like, okay. So, because life has its way of pushing you, kind of just piling onto you. There's so much going on. It's so difficult to be mindful. How often do we really sit down and think, oh, I felt this, I had this thought. Does it really mean anything? Is it a guidance?
Yeah.
We're so busy, right? So
Or
I
we
got
chalk
that.
them up to being coincidences, or, like, for example, me, like, I have the most vivid dreams and I get spiritual signs all the time. I have told the story on my podcast before where my father who passed away visited me and it felt so real. But there are times where my logical sense is like, was that real, or was I just making it up, or was it a dream, or because I watch certain things? Like I've had even I've done plant medicine and I've had like experiences where white light beings are standing behind me and crowning me.
Oh,
And then but then I think, was it because I was on the plant medicine? Was it because I've listened to so many near death experiences and they all talk about light beings? Like, am I creating it, or is it real? That's why I was asking you, like, how did you know that you weren't just imagining it, or creating it on your own?
See, Paola, now that's the thing. So a lot of people ask me that, and I say, take that path and see where it leads.
Mm,
So it's almost like, again, I like to give very, very vivid examples, because what happens is most of the people that I guide, when the time is right, they remember that example. So it's like almost like a stranger you see every day on a walk. How do you make
mhm,
friends with that stranger? You first nod, then you smile, and then you take it further. You have to
uh-huh.
build that relationship. So the universe is contacting you, you're getting messages and signs. Take the road less traveled. Well,
Yeah.
it takes a faith. You got to keep the mind separate and then sit down. Like I said, when you talk about moments of happiness, moments of joy, trust me, there will be no mind, because I'll say, are you sure you felt that happiness? You were happy? Did you see yourself in the mirror? You were smiling. You will be like, no, Shilpi, I don't need to see it. I
Mhm.
know it. There's no logic to these things. You feel it. And when you feel it, most of the most beautiful things that are available to us are only felt. That's
Mm.
me. That's my path. It served me well. And I personally feel it's the most blissful place to be in spite of the chaos that life brings in.
Yeah. Definitely.
So, yes, I mean, again, so follow those signs, take those signs. And I took those signs and I said, all right, I need to work on myself. And then again, you have these dark night of the souls, because dark nights of the soul coming in at various, it's almost like I always tell myself, and again, those conversations with the universe or the higher self or the higher source, whatever you want to call it, because I'm not religious at all. I'm very spiritual.
Mhm.
So it's almost like having those conversations, like it's a lull. What's coming? What's coming now? And then you've learned your lesson. You've had a certain learning, and then you kind of apply it, and then it comes again. So it's like a beautiful journey you are on. But again, coming back to my life, my story, I remember then I had a miscarriage,
Mm.
and the doctor said we're not able to. Here, they do not really allow you to have an abortion until you miscarry. And I said, okay. And she stopped the medication. It was not happening. There was no heartbeat. 12
Mm.
weeks, nothing is happening. So again, minus the chaos of the life. I remember it was a full moon, and I went and started walking on the terrace, and I started, having conversations with the universe, with this soul. And I said, you know what, sweetheart, it's not the time to come. There's no heartbeat. I definitely do not want a sick child, because I've seen what it is with my sister. Go and come back again. I'll be ready. Do not
Mm.
worry about me. And these conversations, and I also felt that, maybe there's something he's waiting for, the child is waiting for, the soul is waiting for. I by that time had already had an understanding that when a miscarriage happens, there's a certain amount of learning that a mother needs to have. The parent, you're not ready to host that soul, nurture that soul who's probably, way advanced. So of course, then I went back home, and one of my most wonderful friends, very, very tender, gentle girl, I knew from college. She's a doctor. She obviously did my DNC. And then, what happened when she said, I was in so much pain. And I remember at that time, I didn't remember that vision. It's only at night that I suddenly woke up, and I told my husband, when they brought me out of the into the recovery room, I saw a fairy in blue on my right saying, I'll come back in this month.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, no, 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 you're hallucinating. Maybe it's the, anesthesia. You know what? I remember we had Blackberries at that time. I opened the notes and I said, this is the vision that I've had. So and so, it was a fairy in blue. It's going to be a boy.
Mm.
And I left it at that. Fast forward, um, about 9 months, I was getting into the car, and I tell my husband, I'm getting implantation pains. And he's like, are you nuts? Okay, let's go to
Are
the
you
doctor.
nuts?
Yeah. So I go to the doctor and she said, this is the first time somebody is coming in telling me I'm getting implantation pain and I'm getting pregnant.
Wow.
And I was like, is there a way to
Can you
figure
check?
out?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, sweetheart, there's certain things which are beyond us. But again, I will try and check. So she said, it suggests, but we really can't be sure because if this is true, it is really early.
Mm-hmm.
I go back home. All right. I write probably the first or the second week. This is the day. It's a boy. Check after 12 weeks. And I told my husband, open these notes after the 12th week scan. And time fast forward, it turned out to be a boy when the scan was done. And then I said, okay, so this is working. I said, all right, now what do you want me to name you? And then I used to be teaching in a school. And I remember this kid suddenly, he was 6 years old in the school bus. We would go by the school bus. He started sitting next to me every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him, what is your name? He said, my name is Kian. I said, all right. And then when I forgot about it when I was shortlisting names, that was one of the names I'd shortlisted because I wanted something of the source in that. And it's like a gift from the source. And that's how I remembered that I
Yeah.
asked, what do you want to be named? And this is how that kid had kind of snuggled onto me every single day. And I said, all right. So we named him by that name. And like I said, you take that path, you develop that relationship, it just strengthens and strengthens and strengthens.
Yeah.
So this was one of the experiences that I'd had. I'd had a few others when, in the middle of the highway, I remember we were returning back. This was way earlier. And right in the middle of a 6-lane highway on a flyover on the third lane, my car stops. It was 10 in the night. Delhi is not a safe place to be. I was returning from the hospital with my sisters after my sister's transfusion. There were no mobile phones in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember it stopped and somebody knocked on the window. You don't realize it at that time, right? It's only in the hindsight you go back and try and figure things out. And he's like, madam, I can help you. The spark plug has gone. I remembered all this later. And he's like,
Uh-huh.
I can drive you home. And we were just about 1.5 kilometers from the home. And so I told my sister to go back. He drove us because it was really unsafe. He drives us. My dad comes down. And I remember him looking at me and saying, it's a $20 thing. It's just a spark plug. And he just kind of vanished before I could even thank him.
Wow.
And then the next day I asked my dad, what was wrong? He's like, oh, it was the spark plug. I was like, what? And that's when I kind of rewind. How do you find somebody knocking on your window in the middle of a 6-lane highway in the middle of it, knowing what's happening, drops me home, and then just kind of,
Leave. Yeah. Your guardian
yes,
angel.
absolutely. So I realized that I'm being watched over.
Mm-hmm.
I am being guided. And of course there was this voice constantly guiding me in the medical college, which is where it really started, and I knew that was my spirit guide. Of course I made connection later on, and it's again the relationship that you build up. And same with my daughter's delivery. I remember they would wheeled me in, and they wouldn't allow my husband in the recovery room just to be with me. They wheeled me in, and I looked at this anesthetist and I said, I don't like his energy. I don't want him to do my anesthesia. It's just like everything going on in the mind.
Yeah.
And he's facing it and just kind of pushing it in. And the doctor walks in and says, Shilpi, the lady next to you is bleeding. And the theater will take 10 more minutes, the next one. And mind you, my child is in distress. It's beeping constantly because it was supposed to be a normal delivery and then there was distress. So they were taking me for an emergency C-section.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, but if you allow, we will take her in because she will bleed to death.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you know what happened? And I said, please take her because yes, I mean, if my child is meant to survive it, he's going to take care of it. But it's a decision I needed to make. They literally wheeled me out and left me on the corridor, wheeling the
Mm.
other, which is an emergency, with everything still stuck onto me. And I remember I got really scared. I got up that I'll just run away, because it was so eerie, the monitor beeping, and I was scared. And then I realized, oh no, I have to deliver this child. And I somehow spotted something on a board next to me on the wall, and it said something about prayers. So I
Mm.
started praying and I fell off. I remember being woken up by somebody with a soft, gentle nudge. And he said, "Are you okay?" And when I opened, I saw like deep ocean blue eyes. That's the only thing I remember of the gentleman. And he's like, "I'm your anesthetist. I'm going to wheel you in." So he wheels me in. They do the thing. And even after the general anesthesia, I wake up and the doctor says, "Congratulations, it's a girl." He wheeled me out. He said, "Are you okay? You were scared." I said, "No, I'm fine. Thank you so much for being there for me." I still remember that. 2 weeks later, I go back to thank everybody, took, chocolates and everything. And I said, "I want to see the anesthetist also." And they're like, "Yeah." So they took me in, and I said, I saw from the glass window. I said, "No, no, no, not this one. Mine was the one with the blue eyes." And he's like, "No, there's nobody with blue eyes." I said, "No, there is somebody with the blue eyes." And then he showed me the pictures of, like, they were all there on the sides. They have the thing going on in the screen. And I was like, "No, this is not the one. This is not the one." He said, "Madam, these are the only ones we have had for a couple of years. And we know who was on
Wow.
duty that day." So
Eh,
it just kind of, again, how do you doubt when you're constantly watched over, looked after, and supported, where none of the humans can support you?
Yeah.
It's beyond. And I was just grateful. And I knew, but then again, child, being motherhood, bringing up kids. And then, of course, so this was when my daughter was born. Then my son was born. Between was the uh, after the miscarriage and my DNC, I had another dark night of the soul where I had a tonsillectomy.
Mm.
And those 10 days, I remember, I did not know where I was. I was there, I was doing everything as a mom. But I remember on the 10th day, I was sitting and reading a book. It's by an Indian author, and it's a spiritual book called, and I love to give the book names because it's so, so important. Sometimes, for me, when I was lost and there was nobody I found who
Mm-hmm.
would actually acknowledge and say, "These are your gifts. These
Yeah.
are real. This happens with other people." Books
Yeah.
were the ones that helped me. So there's the book called Fakir by an Indian author, and it's a channeled book. I was reading it, and suddenly my ear popped open, and I saw the cars down, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm alive. Where was I last? Where was I?" And I think that's where things just shifted.
Mm-hmm.
I was a different person. It just completely, there was something very different about me, because after that I started getting people who needed help with things I'd already learned, or the path that I'd already walked, the lessons I'd already learned.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, you know what, it's overwhelming, but I am always very kind." So I started helping people. And then again, it's a process, right? Some people walk over you, some people make fun of you, some people use you. And I was like, "You brought this my way. This is a sign. I am taking it."
Yeah.
So
So
I,
people were coming to you, and even though you were getting some people that were into it, and then some people who were telling you you're crazy or this is not, but still, this is, I have been down the rabbit hole of near-death experiences and all that is spiritual, and people who have stories like this is so incredible to me. It just, it resonates with me, and it also just like, it validates that there's so much more than what we see. And there's a lot of things that religion can't explain, or they don't try to explain, or that there's just so much more that we don't know. And I always tell people the cosmic joke is we don't know anything until we cross over. We have the smallest amount of knowledge and wisdom that we're allowed to have versus the universal knowledge and wisdom, which is so much more than we can even imagine. One of my favorite books is Dying to Be Me by Anita Morjani. And she says in her book that we are in like a dark warehouse and we can only see just the time with a flashlight. That's basically all we have. And that's all we can see is what the flashlight is shining on. But when we cross over, it's like someone turns on the light to the huge warehouse that we're in with all the things and all the possibilities and all the infinite joys and all that stuff. And so that's why for me, like when people tell me stories like that, I truly believe it. I believe that it's possible. I believe that, there's so much more than meets the eye, basically.
Yeah, and Paola, I also personally feel whatever we are following, even religion, anything, all that is intangible. You can't
Mm-hmm.
validate it. And how do you explain? It's so beautiful. We all have that innate, I think, hardware inside us because forget, I mean, humans, we've got brains, like we've created so much, we've invented so much. Look at the beauty, the clockwork this universe is.
Mm-hmm.
The birds, there are no alarm clocks. Ants, I mean, everybody gets on to the work with the dawn. And at dusk, everybody knows where to return. How? There are no maps, there are no Google Maps, there's no ways. And the most intelligent of the entire universe, us humans, are using maps. And yes, they're lost.
Right.
And, it's to me, when I go out, so again, while we talk about these gifts and everything, I think what is the most important thing that is not letting us connect with ourselves is not being mindful. And that's
Mm.
why mindfulness, awareness, being aware, being mindful is so important. I remember when I was going through these gifts and people were coming to me for help. I remember
Mm-hmm.
one particular moment where I was just standing and the whole world was going to work. And of course, you have these relatives, like, oh, you've studied so much, you're a doctor, but look at what you're doing. You're just a mom sitting at home. And I was just looking at the world, cars, everything. And I was just standing on the middle of that road, enjoying the breeze. And I was like,
Mm.
how lucky am I to be not running around like these people and to be able to just stand and feel this breeze? How many
Mm.
of us do that, right? And that joy that it brought, I was like, this is priceless. I don't want to earn anything. But again, the relatives and all those things were coming in, and I was like, what is my purpose? I remember somebody had approached for a job, and he's like, but what do you like doing, Shilpi? What do you want to do? And I was like, I want to help people. And I still remember he laughed at me and he said, how are we going to help people and earn? And I was like, I don't know, but I am in my 30s. So I forget the earning. If you're asking me, what do I genuinely want to do? I want to help
Yeah.
people. That's it. And then, I started having my conversations with the universe every day. I don't know how this is going to happen, but this is what I need. And if I am meant to be on this path, you need to lead the way.
Yeah.
And I was going through Facebook one day and I have this random suggestion and I see
Mm-hmm.
this picture and I feel that I need to connect with this person and ignored it. Second day, third day, same. Then I messaged the elderly lady and I said, I'm so sorry, but I want to know. I think it's your son. Can I? And every time I look at the picture, I feel that I must connect with you. So she's
Mm-hmm.
like, are you a psychic or a medium? And I'm like, what's that? She's an Australian lady. I mean, one of the wonderful people I know now, way older than me. And she said, I said, why do you ask? She said, because the son that you're talking about passed away 10 years ago in an accident at the age of 90.
Wow.
So let's get talking. And so she was related to us in the distant family. She's related to us, and but not in touch with the Indian roots. And because she had lost the son and she'd gone all over the world, trying to meet medium psychics, getting over grief, learning about how she can deal with it. uh, she actually introduced me to a lot of things. And she said, do you even know what a big gift it is? Because I go to different people to get various information, but you are channeling all the messages for me. I mean,
Mm,
of course, this relationship goes back 15 years now, 16
yeah.
years ago. And I was dealing with certain things in the human life in terms of the roles that I play as a mother, as a daughter-in-law, where, honestly, on the spiritual path, you can take 10 steps, but these drag you down 5 steps, 6 steps, because
Mm-hmm.
there's so much going on. And, there's sadness, there's hurt. You know how relationships, everything is so complicated because everybody's acting out of their own suffering.
Yes.
And she said, so she would help me. And I realized that there was so much I still needed to do. So it's like never an empty slate, like constantly peeling layers of the onion that we are. And, kind of, no matter how much work, like she said, right? It's just that torchlight. There's so much more. There's
Yes.
so much.
Yeah,
It's
you can read so many
infinite.
books and go to so many conferences and do so many courses, and you still are, like you said, it's just scratching the surface, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. But at least, you're on the path. You're not lost
Yeah.
out. Again, a very, very vivid description of you're not on those by lanes, you're on the highway. So it's like, this is my path. My focus is sorting, being on my soul's purpose. The rest are all, again, like Shakespeare said, we're all playing those roles. It's a big drama. That's
Mm-hmm.
okay. Focus on the path, focus on the play, focus on your role.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I came to be. And then I remember I was helping a single mom, a lovely British lady, with some messages for her. And she was going through a difficult time in her life. She'd lost her husband. And one day I woke up and my messenger was chock-a-blocked and blocked. There were
Mm.
hundreds of messages. And then I saw some calls from her and said, what just happened? And she's like, Shilpi, somebody asked me and I gave your number. And I was like, yeah, but I was just helping you as a friend. And she's like, no, honey, it's time to spread your wings.
Yeah.
I was very, very hesitant, but the first lady who came to me, I remember she was in her 60s. She came in and she was in tears. And I promised myself that if this doesn't work, and I don't get messages, I will not charge her and I'll
Mm-hmm.
apologize. And I remember when she left, I, kind of turned my head to see she was going through towards the elevator and she was literally like, dancing. And that brought so much of contentment in me.
Yeah.
Said, that's what I was looking for. And now all that I can hear and see has a purpose.
Mm.
Like you see it in action. It's not intangible anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's creating happiness. So that's how it started. And eventually, I'm talking about again, 18, 19 years ago. Slowly, I started having more younger children asking me, but why do I come back to you with the same thing again and again and again? I said,
Mm-hmm.
very good question. So then I realized that the guidance was developing more into focusing on yourself, being more aware, coming down on this path, because all of us have a certain pattern that we have in our lives that, unless we really work on, kind of gets harder and harder and harder until we learn that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So out of 10 things, the five, they just they differ, but everybody will have five and everybody will have three the hard they need to work on, two which are really hard, one which is the lesson of the lifetime.
Yeah.
So things like those. And I realized then again, all of this is you whatever you see, whatever it is, it's outside. But where are the answers lying? It just comes back to you.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to what the life that you've experienced. So I started using these gifts to bring out guidance and messages, not just for what's going to happen, because to my scientific mind, everything has to have logic.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started getting guidance in terms of energy so that my mind knew what's happening. Of course, when you're channeling, the mind has to just be surrendered. You have a message, you just kind of pass it forward. That's it. Without any judgment, without any attachment to it, without any attachment to what was going on in your day before you came in and sat down as a clairvoyant to the
Yeah.
reading. So, of course, everybody does their work. If you're a great podcaster, you do your homework, you prepare yourself. Same thing, no big deal. I do my
Mm-hmm.
job well, like everybody else. So I have to prepare well, of course. But at the same time, to be that vessel, to be able to channel, to be that empty vessel. Only when you're empty, you have space for things to be brought in.
Mm.
And when to be that empty channel is work of lifetimes because it's working on yourself.
Yeah.
That every emotion that comes out, every thought that comes up, every thought, every past history, everything, memory, sadness, everything, every word, spoken, unspoken, thought, said, unsaid. So it's a world in itself, again, like you said, minuscule of, you know. And the more I worked on myself, and I kind of learned a certain lesson on my life's path, the more similar people would come with similar
Yeah.
issues. So it was almost like, you've learned it, now you gotta help. Initially, it was overwhelming. It was very exhausting. And I would say, but I have my hands full. I remember one day I was so pissed. I had this conversation. I have this massive picture of one of the saints on my staircase. That's where I sit and have my conversations. And one day I was like, that's it. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. And I heard, you know what? That was not the deal. Once
Mm.
you're on it, you can't go back. And I was like, fine then, but can we just go easy? This is hard. This is
Mm-hmm.
super hard. And then I heard, again, but honey, where you were, it's better than being stuck. You wanted it, you asked for it. Again, so I needed more surrender. Surrendered again and said, all right, whosoever you bring on my path. So I started channeling and bringing out events from people's past which were having an energetic imprint on their life. It's almost as simple as when you sit down, I always say we're mini radios. So if you want to tune into a particular channel, you got
Yeah.
to arrange your frequency to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I see as a psychic are future possibilities. Nothing is set in stone. It's taken me 22 years to be doing these things, is simply because when people are depending on you for guidance, you
Mm-hmm.
need to be sure of where you're going, where your ethics are, and the ego has no role to play here. It's a gift. Everybody does their job well. That's what you're doing, and that's it.
Yeah.
So when you are doing this and people are really relying on you, you got to have your basics really, really clear. So I always tell everybody, this is meant to be empowering you. Anything that takes away your power is not the right way to go about things. What I see as a psychic is your future possibility from the vibration that you are existing at right now. Don't like it? Change it. Change the frequency. I changed it myself. Remember when I was seeing apparitions which I didn't really like, and they were making me uncomfortable. So I knew they are not the ones that I really want to be connected to. I changed
Yeah.
my frequency. Hard work again, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of peace to make. But then again, it works. So
Mm-hmm.
you basically, the present is past future, isn't it? So if
Mm-hmm.
your present is not looking good, you're stuck. Let's go back in the past and see what's holding you back. Is there any apology that was required? Are you holding on to grudges? We all have relationships, we all have things which have gone wrong. You don't have to go and say sorry to somebody face to face. Everything is energy. Just do
Mm-hmm.
it and let go, because you are dragging those tons and kilos of, it's like a laundry bag, all of us. There's, like thing rotting down, and you're kind of layering it up with perfume and then saying, oh, but I don't smell nice. Honey, you
Yeah.
need to smell nice, get the gunk out.
Yes.
And then the vessel becomes, and then every day you sort out whatever is going on if you want to be that beautiful vessel. So we kind of, then bring out the past, and then you start feeling better. Then you put yourself on a path of awareness. So it's something that a routine you have to follow. It's as simple as, you want to have a good, healthy physical body. You have a routine. You eat healthy. You go to the gym. You miss out for a month. You're gone. So you drag that. Similarly, there is discipline required. Small things, gratitude, very, very simple things. All of us do it, but we do it just out of compulsion. Being told, oh, I need to pray, I need to light the incense, I just need to say, thank you, God. Do you mean it? Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Can we just, you're doing it. Can we just say, I'm doing it because I want to be led to the path? Can we ask? Because the rule is very clear. You, you don't get given anything unless you ask.
Mm.
When I sit down to channel, I ask for guidance. I surrender. So you ask, you surrender, and then you kind of just be and let them take you where they want to take you. Can you believe it? The most intelligent species. We have gone to the moon, yet the ants are following that. I was seeing a documentary where these, turtle babies, they hatch out of the eggs which are on the shore. And intuitively, they go to, most of them go towards the sea, not towards the land, because they'll be eaten by the birds.
Yeah.
How? So there is an innate system in everybody, that whatever you call it, that GPS,
Yeah.
anything. Now,
Yeah, because I've interviewed so many women and they say, "Well, I followed the path that was told to me, by society, by my friends, by my family members, but something innate within me says this isn't the path I'm supposed to be on." And then they have the dark night of the soul and they get back on track, and then they're doing something completely different than what this society, or their group of friends or religion or whatever told them to do. Because we all, like you said, have that GPS, that knowing of what we are meant to do, what we are is going to give us that really fulfilling joy
absolutely.
versus doing what other people are telling us to do. Because we can get the house, we can get the car, we can have the finances, we can have the husband and the children, but are we truly happy? Are we truly fulfilled? Are we truly joyful? Which most of us aren't. And so then we have that dark night of the soul. We go back to following our intuition, and then we're back on the right path. So I beautiful. As we wrap up this episode, Shilpi, what would be your nugget of wisdom for anyone who is listening, who may be doubting their gifts, doubting the things that they're seeing, spiritual signs maybe? What would be your nugget of wisdom for them who is listening or watching on YouTube right now?
Most importantly, the way out is in. It sounds simple, but every answer that you need is inside of you. Delve deep inside, because if you were meant to get that happiness from the cars, from the family, from children, you would have got it by now. The fact that you're stuck, you feel there is something beyond this, and you've seen all of it outside. Nothing brings you joy. You need to come back to yourself. It's all
Yeah.
inside. There's a whole beautiful world inside you. We all have that innate mechanism, that system, those gifts, and the only way to activate them is self work.
Yes. Oh, it reminds me of the universal law that I just posted on TikTok, as above, so below. It has, you go inward. When everything outside of you is out of alignment, and like you said earlier, when it's chaos, it's like go inward so that you can fix whatever is, like you said earlier, maybe there's somebody you need to forgive. Maybe there's somebody you need to like untether from energetically. Maybe there's some, you
Also,
know, stuff that you need to work on. Self work is so important so that it
forgive
can,
your own self.
yeah,
Forgive people. You've not. So many times we are our biggest critics, standing in front of the mirror. Have you apologized to yourself? Have you forgiven yourself?
yeah,
And again, that is self love.
yeah.
So
Like
it's
going back to
layers
what you
of
were
layers.
saying, words hurt. And whether they're words from other people or words that you're saying to yourself. they can have so much damage because we are like 80% water, and water is programmable. What are we programming our water and the cells in our body? If we're telling it we're ugly and worthless and not good enough, then that's what we're programming. That's the reason why we're calling dis-ease in our body. So, oh, I love it, Shilpi. So how can my audience find you?
They can find me on Instagram. That is, again, Awakening with Shilpi. I've got my website, that's www.awakeningwithshilpi.com. Again, Facebook, Awakening with Shilpi. And if they want, they can contact me through the website as well. I've got my email, again, awakeningwithshilpi@gmail.com. And I would say just put that intention out. If our paths are meant to cross, they would find me and I would find them.
Yes, exactly.
You found me and I
I
found you.
know. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Paola. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.